Hello, welcome to Horario. My name is SAIMEDHA and I am here to teach you English for class 10. The first unit in our syllabus is Glimpses of Green. From the name itself, you might have understood that the unit deals with nature, natural beings and all that. Why do you think nature is that important to us? Because we evolved, exist and will decease in nature. Nature has been an inspiration for many man-made developments we see today. And of course, the beauty of nature has never ceased to mesmerize us. Now let's go some 50-60 years back, where your parents or grandparents were kids or teenagers. Do you think they had all these smart gadgets that we use today to entertain ourselves? No. So how do you think they spent time and made good memories? Let me tell you, they were so much more attached to nature than we are. And if you ask them, they'll have hundreds of stories to tell you about what all activities they did outside. Now open your textbooks and the first thing we see in Unit 1 is a haiku. A haiku is a short form of poetry that originated in Japan. It has only 3 phrases and does not need to necessarily rhyme. Haikus are mostly of nature and all, but they can be of other topics. So here I give you your task 1. After this class, I want you to write a haiku. It's only 3 lines and it can be of any topic that you wish. So now let's see the haiku in our textbook. The mountain mist hovering over the pines and ponds, unveiling heaven. Here's a picture. Do you see how the mist or the clouds are hovering over the pine trees and the pond nearby it? Isn't this what heaven might look like? I loved this haiku and I hope you too. Below that in the textbook is a sentence which says, nature is not a place to visit, it is home. This is because we are part of nature. Nature is with us and nature is us. So if we cause damage to nature, we are only harming ourselves. And if we take good care of nature, we are bringing happiness to ourselves and all other beings. So here, let's get into the first lesson of Unit 1, a short story by Ruskin called Adventures in a Banyan Tree. Before we get into the story, let's talk about Ruskin Bond. Ruskin Bond is undoubtedly one of the best children's authors in India. He is an Indian author of British descent. Ruskin Bond's simple writing style and heart-touching experiences have attracted readers like you and me of all ages. So if you have not read a Ruskin Bond book yet, I suggest that next time you visit a library, it would be wonderful if you picked books like The Room on the Roof, The Blue Umbrella, or any book of Ruskin Bond. Now let's see how a boy gets attached to nature in lesson 1, Adventures in a Banyan Tree. The story is in first person narrative, which means that the storyteller tells the story in his point of view. He uses words like I, me, we, etc. There is first person narrative, second person narrative and third person narrative. We'll get into that in the coming classes. Now let's see the first paragraph. Though the house and grounds of our home in India were grandfather's domain, The magnificent old banyan tree was mine, chiefly because grandfather at the age of 65 could no longer climb it. Grandmother used to tease him about this and would speak of a certain Countess of Desmond, an English woman who lived to the age of 117 and would have lived longer if she hadn't fallen while climbing an apple tree. The spreading branches of the banyan tree, which curved to the ground and took root again, forming a maze of arches, gave me endless pleasure. The tree was older than the house, older than grandfather, and as old as the town of Dehra, nestling in a valley at the foot of the Himalayas. So we've understood that the story takes place in the town of Dehra or Dehradun, in a valley in the Himalayas. The boy talks about his grandfather, grandmother, and a banyan tree. The boy is so happy that he has the banyan tree all for himself and his adventures because his grandfather can no longer climb the tree due to his age. His grandmother teases or warns his grandfather, talking about a Countess of Desmond, which is a nickname given to a woman because of her longevity. So this English woman could have lived longer than 117 years of age if she had not climbed an apple tree at that age and fallen down. All of you must have seen a banyan tree, right? The branches, the roots. Have you ever noticed its beauty? The boy here notices the intricate puzzles these roots and branches make, and this gives him immense happiness. The boy also mentions that the tree is older than the house, older than his grandfather, and as old as the town of Dehra. My first friend and familiar was a small grey squirrel. Arcing his back and sniffing into the air, he seemed first to resent my invasion of his privacy. But when he found out that I did not arm myself with a catapult or air gun, he became friendlier. And when I started leaving him pieces of cake and biscuit, he grew bolder and finally became familiar enough to take food from my hands. So the boy's first friend in the banyan tree was a small grey squirrel. Did they become friends on the first meet itself? No. The boy had to gain the trust of the squirrel by showing it love. The first thing the squirrel noticed was that the boy was unarmed, which means the boy did not have a catapult or an air gun with him. A catapult is a Y-shaped wooden piece with an elastic hung to it where you can pelt stones, from which you can pelt stones. So later on, the boy started giving small pieces of food to the squirrel, and that's how the new friendship began. Before long, he was delving into my pockets and helping himself to whatever he could find. He was a very young squirrel, and his friends and relatives probably thought him headstrong and foolish for trusting a human. Since the boy started giving the squirrel food and taking care of him, he gained the squirrel's trust very easily. That's how animals are, right? At first they'll hesitate to come to us, and then they'll be jumping all over our bodies. So, since the squirrel was a very little squirrel, his friends and family thought that he was headstrong, which in this context means stubborn. He was stubborn and foolish because humans may harm him. Why would he be friends with humans? That was their doubt. In the spring, when the banyan tree was full of small red figs, Birds of all kinds would flock into its branches. The red-bottomed bulbul, cheerful and greedy, gossiping rosy pastors, and parrots and crows squabbling with each other all the time. During the fig season, the banyan tree was the noisiest place on the road. So in the springtime, figs used to flower in the banyan tree. A fig is a small pear-shaped, juicy, dark fruit. So birds of different kinds would come to the banyan tree and squabble, which means fight with each other for the figs. So during the fig season, the banyan tree would be the noisiest place in the road. Halfway up the tree, I had built a small platform on which I would spend the afternoons when it wasn't too hot. I could read there, propping myself up against the bole of the tree with cushions taken from the drawing room. Treasure Island, Huckleberry Finn, the Mowgli stories, and the novels of Edgar Rice Burroughs and Louisa May Alcott made up my bag of very mixed reading. From this, we have understood that the boy's favorite hobby is reading. He built a platform on top of the banyan tree and set it up with cushions from the drawing room. When the weather wasn't too hot, he would go up there with his pack of books and start reading. Treasure Island by Robert Stevenson, Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain, the Mowgli stories by Rudyard Kipling were some of his reads. He would prop himself against the bole of the tree, which means prop means support. He would support himself against the bole, which means trunk of the tree, and would sit there and enjoy his reading. So here I am with your second task. I want you to write the names and authors of all the English books you have read till now. If you have not read any English book yet, I would recommend you to start now. Now make a list of the books you have read and set a target. It may be 5 books a year or 10 books a year. That's your wish, but make sure you achieve your target. Okay, now let's get back to the story. When I did not feel like reading, I could look down through the banyan leaves at the world below, at grandmother hanging up or taking down the washing, at the cook quarreling with a fruit vendor, or at grandfather grumbling at the hardy Indian marigolds which insisted on springing up all over his very English garden. Usually nothing very exciting happened while I was in the banyan tree. But on one particular afternoon, I had enough excitement to last me through the summer. So on days when he did not feel like reading, the boy would sit on top of the banyan tree and look down. He would observe the events going on. I would like all of you to observe nature as well. Not only nature, your surroundings too. You may learn a lot of things from that. On most days, all these just very usual things used to go on. But on one particular afternoon, something very exciting happened. Something that he could not forget for the whole summer. Before we check out what that is, let's get into some questions. Question number 1. Though the house and grounds were of grandfather's domain, the magnificent old banyan tree was mine. Why did the boy say so? From the first sentence, it was clear that the boy's grandfather had in control the house and the surrounding grounds. Since the grandfather could not climb the banyan tree, the boy had no one to interrupt him during his adventures. Question number 2. How did the squirrel become a friend of the boy? As stated before, the boy and the squirrel did not become friends instantly. He gained the squirrel's trust by coming unarmed and leaving pieces of food for the squirrel. Question number 3. What did the friends of the squirrel think about his friendship with a human? What might have made them think so? The squirrel's friends and relatives thought that he was risking his life by being friends with a human. This is because they might have experienced humans teasing them with catapults or air guns. Question number 4. How was the banyan tree the noisiest place during the fig season? Various birds used to come and quarrel for the delicious fig that developed during the spring season. This is why the banyan tree was the noisiest place during that season. Question number 5. How did the boy make the spring season exciting for him? As we discussed, the boy used to spend his time reading, or else he loved observing events that went around the banyan tree. Now let's see what happened till now. A boy was attached to a banyan tree at his home. He made friends with a squirrel and he used to read or watch other things from the banyan tree. On one fine day, something very exciting happened. And to know what that is, we'll meet in the next class. Hope you've understood today's session. If you have any doubts or suggestions, please leave it in the comment box. Thank you.